All right, party people, what's good? It is your boy BQ. Welcome back to the Negative BQ YouTube channel. It's 2025. It's a new year, so we got to kick off with a new channel intro. I got several intros depending on the podcast, depending on the content. Just want to switch things up this year. I think it's very important. I talk about this a lot with TNA. I really always have. I think it's very important at the top of a year that you always kind of do a soft rebrand, freshen things up a little bit. And trust me, when we get into this episode here pretty soon, I'm definitely going to get into that. But yeah, just doing things a little bit different. It was time for a change, time for a switch. And this is the first podcast of 2025. I hope, we had some tragedies out there this year, even where I live here in Las Vegas, of course, not to the extent of elsewhere. But all things considered, I hope those of you who decided to celebrate going into the new year. I don't. I'm old. I'm in bed by 9:30. But for those of you who decided to celebrate, I hope it was safe. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And here's to a strong 2025 for you. 24 for me personally. I don't peel back the BQ curtain a whole lot. It was one of my rougher years. I hadn't had what I considered a bad year since maybe like 2017. That's probably the last time where I was like, yo, this was a rough one. 2018 was kind of up and down for various reasons. There's so many factors that can come into play when you're having did you have a good year? Did you have a bad year? But it was rough for me because it was my first full year here living in Las Vegas. I lived, we were here for about half of 2023. And then last year was the first full year living out here. And man, there's a lot of struggles moving around and adapting to a new place. And this wasn't somewhere I necessarily wanted to move to. I was real content living in the Midwest and wanted to settle down, retire, all that stuff in Southern Illinois. But happy wife, happy life. And I had to make a move that, benefited my family. It was just not something I particularly wanted to do. And it took me, I'm still struggling with it, to be honest, to find peace and happiness here. There's worse places to live in the world than Las Vegas, but at the same time, I was very settled where I was. So this was just a big change for me. I was not. I moved around a lot in the military, and that was just it for me. So here's the 2025 for me, and I'm not going to get into any more personal stuff because you guys want to hear some talk regarding TNA. And I came up with 5 predictions for 25, and it was a lot harder this year. I do this every year. I have my predictions, my New Year's resolutions, whatever. This one was different, and it was hard because the company is actually growing now. And they're actually making moves to where I really don't know what they're going to do. In years past, I've got all these ideas in my head and I'm making predictions, but it was like the company was a lot more predictable. So that's why it was easier to create the content. Now it's like, yeah, there's some things that no matter who's in charge, who's not in charge, there's some ways that TNA operates, and that's probably never going to change. But we saw so many improvements last year. And, like I would go into every year saying, hey, this is the year they're going to, step up production value, because in my head, I'm like, they have no choice. They have to. And then it's another year of shit, and this past year, they actually did step it up, and they made so many improvements in so many areas. And I think there's going to be more because what I was explaining to you guys, and I don't want to continue to I don't want to name drop Scott a lot in 25, and I don't want to use him as an excuse, but I have to reiterate to a lot of you guys that decisions that he made they still, there were some where they were able to address those issues immediately, some that it took them several months, and there's some that they still couldn't, you know? Um, what's an analogy here? I bet I'm going to fuck this up. But if you spend an entire year putting on weight, all right? Let's say you're just eating like crap for an entire year. You gain 40 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever. I'm just throwing a number out there. You can go on the hardest diet of your life the next month and you're not going to lose all that weight. You'll lose some, but you're not going to lose it all. Now, if you put on that weight over the course of 3, 4 years, that's even more work you got to do. You understand? So when he was shown the door, there were people who I've seen talking online, or they told me directly, like, I don't understand why we're still having issues. If you got rid of Scott, now fix what you had an issue with. It's not an excuse. Well, it is kind of an excuse because there were some long-term lasting effects. This year, I think they have a more of a clear vision. And I don't think they can use the Scott excuse anymore. And I don't think we can as fans either. And myself as a podcaster, I don't think I can either. But for the first time, I've had like genuine optimism going into a year. Every other year, I'm just hoping they get better and hope they do this. But this year, I'm like, yo, we're seeing improvements. So my predictions for 25, and some positive, some negative, whatever. So this first one is probably a prediction I make every single year, and I'm wrong every single year. This is the year they get rid of the Digital Media Championship. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking on this because I've said these things on a lot of my podcasts, and I don't want to repeat myself too much. It's a shit championship. It's a joke. The title reigns have been bullshit. They didn't do anything that they said they were going to do regarding cutting edge social media stuff. They had an opportunity last year to rebrand when they rebranded TNA to get rid of it and to make a legitimate mid-card title, and they chose not to. And all the champions we've had, the PCOs, Tommy Dreamers, AJ Francis, fucking Crazy Steve. I'm not going to throw PCO in there because he's a current champion, but Laredo Kid. None of these motherfuckers even get their rematches for the title when they lose them. Like, it's a joke. And there's too many people on the roster fighting for nothing. I think the company thinks the X Division is their mid-card championship. And maybe it is because the guy who holds the belt usually has some status in the company. Mike Bailey, Moose, those guys. They usually, Mustafa Ali. Like, there were some guys who they were not lower card wrestlers, but the opponents oftentimes were and still are. So I don't buy it as the X Division Championship as a mid card title. To me, it's still kind of an undercard. It's a tweener between a mid card title and an undercard title. It's a cruiserweight championship. I know Moose has it. It is. Every once in a while, someone bigger holds the title so that Tom Hannafin can drop the tagline. But we need that U.S. championship, that Intercontinental championship. We need something like that. And what I'm really predicting, and I could be so fucking far off base here, is that when PCO eventually loses these belts, that they merge the two titles together. And it might be, I don't even know what that other championship is, what it's called, North American or some shit. I have no idea. Don't care. But I don't know if that's going to be the championship or they're just going to merge them into something new. But you have an opportunity because PCO's carrying two belts when he drops it to make it one and to make it something people care about. Because I have to believe this Digital Media Championship was a Scott D'Amore idea. And if we're getting rid of Scott D'Amore ideas, let's get rid of Digital Media Championship. Number 2, I think they are going to be a player in free agency this year. The rumors have gone around, and I've done my best to tell you guys the truth. but my reach is only so far. The rumors are going around. Well, TNA's asking people to take pay cuts. There is truth to that, but there's also not truth to that. It's not some cost cutting measure because the company is going out of business or because they don't want to pay people. I've explained to you guys they are trying to balance things out. They want the people at the bottom to make more. And yeah, they want the people at the top to make, I don't want to say they want them to make less, but they don't want, there's a lot of people overpaid in the company. And those are the ones you are seeing leave because they're not needle movers. They're not asking, they're not going to Mike Santana say, "Hey, dude, can you restructure your contract?" Hey, Steve Macklin, can you restructure your contract? They're not going to their major players and saying, "Hey, Joe Hendry, can you take less?" They're going to the freaking Trent Sevens, the Kashitas, the Rhinos, the people who have done nothing and not moved anything, have not moved the needle even a slightest bit. And there's not a lot of needle movers in wrestling, but you understand what I'm talking about. Between those three guys, who was even in a fucking storyline in 2024 and something meaningful? Kushida was looking for the anecdote, but besides that, who was in something meaningful? They were just there. They were just bodies. They were just wrestlers. They were just having matches. So why are we going to pay these dudes, top dollar to be there? So it's not so much about, hey, we're asking people to take less. It's about being smarter with their money. They're going to pay someone who deserves it. It's just that the people getting paid right now, I don't think they think deserve it. But I think they're going to be a bigger player. Every time someone hits social media and they say, "Hey, we're a free agent. Where should we go next? Where should I go next?" There's two places, right? That's it's always so stupid when someone's like, should I go to the NBA or the G League? No one's going to do that. You, you know, um, there's two places. There's two free agent destinations. This might be the year that TNA can become a third destination. And I think this is the year we're finally gonna see a lot of departures from AEW. Now, mainly people who aren't being used. I don't mean people on TV, but there's a lot of people under contract there doing nothing. And I think we're gonna start seeing more of the Frankie Kazarians, the Ellen Angels saying, "Hey, I deserve better than this. I want to do something meaningful." Not like, like Brian Cage is perfectly content getting paid to job on AEW, you know? But there's some people who say, "I deserve better than this." And money matters to a certain point. There has to be a balance of money and happiness. The TNA fans thinks wrestlers should just be happy. They said they want them to take minimal money just to come be happy in a smaller company. Like that isn't going to happen. That's not realistic. There has to be a balance. And I think when you're not paying some of these dudes who are going to see depart here pretty soon, you're able to throw some money at wrestlers that people actually want to see in the company. Now, with that always comes this guy came from AEW, this guy came from WWE. Now they're immediately thrown into the title picture. So it is a double edged sword. I had said on my resolutions podcast that TNA likes the idea of guys from AEW, and WWE coming over more than they actually like them coming over. Because TNA fans really want people to choose TNA when it comes to free agency. That makes them feel very good. But the result is not always something we want to see creatively. You understand? So, but I do think they're going to be more of a player. I think right now, like TNA is like a booking. It's very rare that you see someone kind of hit free agency and choose to come to TNA, if at all. It's more of a booking, and I think this might be the year that they have a shot at signing some of these guys. They have a live episode coming this year. Who knows if we're going to see more? But the more live television we see, the more unpredictable television we see, the more people want to come in and be part of that. And their viewership is not that far off from like Collision now. They're not Dynamite, but they're not that far off from Collision. So people can be like, hey, I can either wrestle on Collision for 100,000 people, or I could come to TNA for 100,000 people. So now you've got an opportunity to make a pitch to some of these guys. So I do think they're going to be a player in free agency this year for the first time in a very long time. My third prediction ties into that. I think there's going to be less handshake deals. I think there's going to be more contracts, longer term contracts. And when I say long term, the Hardy signed for a year. That's basically a fucking handshake deal, but I think we're going to see more name to paper. And this is what I understood. I'm pretty sure I've repeated this once or two times already, but this is what I understood is that um, good old Scott DeCringe, when he was in charge, he operated off a lot of handshake deals because there's just no paper trail. There's no way to prove what he said or didn't say to people. And from what I understand, he pretty much kept his promises. Though this wasn't, Vince McMahon. I'm going to tell you this and do something different. Like Scott kept his promises, but the powers that be at TNA were kind of left in the dark. They didn't know how Scott was operating because he was doing it in secrecy. So I think, based off my conversations, I think they're going to want a lot less of that. I don't think we're going to completely go away from it because if Nick Nemeth decides, hey, I will shake your hand for another 6-12 months, I don't think TNA is going to say no. I don't think they're going to, well, we want you to sign. I don't think they're going to force every single person, but I think there's going to be less of just less people coming in without a deal. I know Tessa Blanchard isn't on one, or apparently she isn't. That's the rumor. I get it with her because she has to prove herself a little bit. But I don't think they're going to say. There was just this feeling under Scott of I'm going to do whatever it takes to get you through the door, And I think with the handshake deals comes. I've said this many times in the last several weeks. With the handshake deals comes promises of title runs. And I didn't do a good job of highlighting this on my resolutions podcast, but an example, if you guys don't understand what I'm talking about, an example is Nick Nemeth's title run. When you're watching the match, what is the story of the match? Josh Alexander turning heel. And with that story, he should have won the world title. In any other company, if that exact storyline took place, Josh would not have lost the match. But they were unable to put the belt on him because they said, well, hey, Nick, please sign here. We'll put the title on you within 6 months. And I'm not totally saying that is the exact conversation because I don't know, but it's one of those things if you use common sense, you see that's what happened. I just think there's going to be more pen to the paper, name to paper, and the company's going to be more control this year of their booking. My next one is I think the world title picture. This one's a little negative. I think the world title picture is going to be a complete shit show this year. I think it's going to be an absolute soup sandwich. Because as I said, I think we're going to have less handshake deals, but I don't think we're going to be completely void of handshake deals. I feel like the Jinder Mahals, the Baron Corbins, I think they're going to bring at least one of these guys in. Maybe Matt Riddle. I don't know what his MLW situation is. I don't think the company can help themselves when guys like this hit the free agent market because I don't think they're fits for AEW. I don't really. Jinder Mahal's not that bad. Like if you guys don't know this already or forgot, he almost came to TNA in 2016, maybe. It was like the year that it was like 2015, I believe. It was the year that he actually re-signed with WWE because they were trying to make a push with the Indian guys and all that stuff. But I was at Slammiversary, I think, and he was there with Chelsea Green because they were trying to bring them both in. So he was pretty close to WWE offered him a contract and he agreed to it. Well, he didn't fully agree to it. He said he actually told him, I have a meeting with TNA. And as a professional, he still had the meeting, knowing there's about a 99% chance he wasn't going to sign there. But, he was a professional and he had the meeting and then he went back to WWE. I know he was on Scott's Maple Leaf show. That's not a promotion. You know, I just wouldn't be shocked if we didn't see him or Baron Corbin. I do not want to see. I did like him back when I used to watch NXT. It's not out of not caring for his character. I just don't. I just think the dude would be here for a booking, not because he wants to be a part of something. And I think it would just be a step backwards for the company. Um, but I do think we're going to see one of those two guys in the company. And when that happens, main event, right? Maybe even a world title run. And you can look at the world title picture in two ways. You can say, hey, it's a big main event scene. Um, you know, um, that means there's lots of possibilities, you know, and that's a good thing. It is a deeper main event roster than they've normally had. They're not forced to throw Eddie Edwards and Sammy Callahan in there, even though Eddie wrestled for the title recently. It's a good problem to have, but at the same time, I think TNA also feels the need to put the title on all these people like sooner than later. And that's why I've been saying that I think Joe Hendry is going to have a very short run. And then I think Mike Santana is going to hold the belt. And then Frankie Kazarian's factored in here, right? For Frankie to come over, I have to believe they also told him you'll be the champion at some point. I don't think it was like, hey, you're going to have it this year type of thing, but you're going to have it. And I think that's going to throw a wrench in it too. Another example, I brought up Josh Alexander earlier, was a couple years ago, Steve Macklin's the champion. All of a sudden, Alex Shelley's champion out of nowhere. And then Chris Sabin's X Division champion out of nowhere. That's the kind of shit I'm talking about. That's not because, the company creatively thought it was a good idea. It was like, hey, we have to give them title runs and this is the only time to do it. But I think they're going to be in that. I still think they're going to be in that position a little bit this year. I don't think they're out of the, in the clear. I think they're going to say, hey, Joe's got to be champion. Mike Santana's got to be champion. Frankie, I don't know what they're going to do. But if he is the champion at some point, he's a very beatable champion. Meaning, if he is the champion, that his title reign is going to be a joke, most likely. And then if you bring in the Jinders, the Baron Corbins, because you don't really have, now that Moose is in the X division, I don't know if you have a strong heel. That's why we're getting babyface versus babyface for fucking, Nick Nemeth and Joe Hendry. I thought they were going to turn Nick Nemeth heel by Genesis. They're not. It doesn't appear that way anyway. So I think you're going to have to bring in some bigger heels, and I think we're going to see those guys. And if they do come in, they're probably going to be a champion also at some point. So I think the main event scene. The main differentiate the main event scene from the title picture, because you can have main events on the show that don't involve championships or whatever. But I think the world title picture is going to be a mess this year, and I think they'll get back on track maybe 2026. But this is one area that I think is going to be very bad, because I think they are still going to be dealing with the effects of Scott D'Amore and who they want to bring in, because they're letting people go, so they're going to want to bring in the best free agents possible. What does that mean when they get here? So I think we're going to have like several very, very short title runs, and I think it's going to be a mess. I think it's going to be one of the weaker parts of the company in 2025. My last one is going to be the complete opposite. I think the Hardies are going to be the tag team champions for the entire year. There is nobody to beat them. They almost have nobody to wrestle at this point. That's why uh, they have wrestled the system 9 times. I'm exaggerating, but they seem to wrestle the system every week. The system's never beat these motherfuckers. Not that I can remember. There might have been there was a 6 man. I think when Nick Nemeth got pinned by Eddie Edwards. I think his partners might have been the Hardys, but I don't think there was a situation where Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers pinned one of the Hardys. And even though that never happened, the Hardys won all the matches. They still wrestle like 50 times. I don't think you can even revisit that anytime soon. Jake Something and Hammerstone are not credible. The Good Hands are not credible. I think they're going to be working with the Rascals here pretty soon. Rascals aren't going to beat them. And that is the problem sometimes in a smaller company, and you bring in the big names and you have nobody good enough to beat them. You had that problem with the Good Brothers, who they fucking suck big dick. But they were big enough stars in a way that you just couldn't beat them. Like the company had no choice but to put the title on them. And that's probably an example too of promises made, because they had like a third title run at one point that nobody was asking for. I mean, it was like you didn't even think they were going to win the match, and they still won the damn belts. The Hardys are going to be one of the more important parts of the show. They're going to be over, but I don't know who can beat them. I don't know what you can do to beat them like this. I just see nothing unless you put the Nemeth brothers together. Where, I mean, Ryan isn't that good, but as a team, they mean a lot more than Ryan by himself in any capacity. But I don't even know who's out there as a free agent. Like, I think the Hardys are going to have it for the entire year until their contract is up. If they retire or they don't come back or whatever. Because TNA does this, right? Mike Bailey, champion all the way up till the very end. Jordan Grace, champion almost to the very end. PCO, champion to the very end. And this isn't an isolated incident. This is almost like every freaking year. We have Mustafa Ali, champion to the very end. Trinity, it's like you're only dropping the title when you absolutely have to. And that's what's going to happen with the Hardys. I think that they're the only reason they're going to lose a title is because they have to, and it's probably going to be some kind of triple threat where they're not even the ones pinned. Those are my resolutions. I want to get into a couple, not resolutions. I'm sorry, I got podcast confused. Those are my predictions. I'm going to give a couple from the Impact Lounge engagement group on Facebook. That link should be in the description here. When I'm updating and doing my soft rebrand for the year, I made some changes to the description of the video. So that link should be in there if you're not part of that group on Facebook yet. But I'm going to get into a couple here that some of the followers there came up with. So Janet Robertson here, she has several. Most of these have several. She thinks Tessa will defeat Masha at Slammiversary. 100%. I wouldn't be shocked if she didn't beat her at Rebellion. There's no way we go past Slammiversary without Tessa being champion. She said Mike Santana and Leon Slater win championships this year. I think Mike Santana 100%. Leon Slater, that's going to be interesting. The story is that he's going to win, but I think things change, and I think Ace Austin should beat Moose. So we'll see what they do. But if Leon Slater doesn't win it, then he'll win like the Digital Media Champions or some bullshit like that if they still have that title around. She says same thing I said. More legit signings, less pay-per appearance. I said more like less handshakes. There's not going to be less pay per appearance because that's how the majority of the contracts are structured. But there are some guys who make like their booking fee. Don't get me wrong. Some guys and girls. But the contracts are more, how can I explain this? Say they bring in a guy and they say, hey, this is what your salary would be. This is what we value at for a salary for 12 months. The pay per appearance, they're prorated those months. So it's like they might be coming in and doing one night of tapings, but they're getting like thousands of dollars for it. You know what I'm saying? There are trust me, there's people making fucking $200 too, but there's they're making a lot. They're like prorated. You know what I'm saying? They just can't they can't really guarantee salaries. You understand what I'm saying? But so I think there's it's not so much less paper appearance, but I think there's gonna be less handshake deals, like I said. You said more distribution deals, whether it's a US or an international. I think international, absolutely. I probably should have thrown that in one of my predictions, but I didn't want to get like too negative here. I don't think they're off access TV. Everyone is like, oh, that's the next step. I will believe that when I see it. She said refocusing on the knockouts division. I think that is very, very realistic. And then lockdown returns in some capacity. I was told, remember several years ago before the pandemic, they were actually bringing lockdown back. I was told that they were still looking at it, that it would eventually return. I think what the issue is, honest to God, I don't think they own a cage. When they were doing lockdowns, is because they were going to partner with Border City Wrestling, and they have a cage. I don't think TNA has a cage. I think that's like honestly what it is. Um, Twan Moore, he has three. Uh, Knockouts division has a huge renaissance. Singles and tag division heat up with new additions. I really think so. I think we're going to have a much better knockouts division this year. I've used NWA as an example quite a bit. Even though their male division is not strong, like Rhino would fit there because they push like the really old guys. But the women's division, there is a lot of talent out there if you give them the opportunity. And I've kind of name dropped regarding NWA the Page sisters and and Taylor Rising, and they got these the King Bees, and they got fucking Natalia Markova. I don't know where they pulled her from. Um, Ella Envy, CJ or Christy James. Man, I mean, they just have so many. Like, it's very deep. You know what I'm saying? The opportunity's there. You just got to give a shit. Like, they have a tag team division, but it never feels like, oh, we have two teams like TNA does. You got to put a little more effort into it. Hopefully, this is the year. Um, he said the big new Gerard distribution deal finally happens. I, I don't know what that. Everyone's very like optimistic about that. As I said, I will believe that when I see it. I don't think they are going to be off Access TV. And Bound for Glory in the UK, I think that's actually possible. They pre-announced everything else but Bound for Glory, which is Bound for Glory is the final big show of the year. I think that's very possible. Randy Adams has a couple. He says they run the Hammerstein Ballroom. I think they could, but at this point, they would come off like they were copying AEW and Ring of Honor and GCW at this point, So I think they're going to stay away from that, but it's possible. And he thinks AJ Styles appears in some capacity. I think that could be possible, but he already said he's not going to do a Hall of Fame induction, so I don't know under what else. He's not going to wrestle for the company. I can assure you that. But he could appear in some capacity. I think it's possible. This might be the year that we get some bigger WWE names on the show. It might be. I don't know. Monte Carlo, he says, much like I have said, TNA remains on Access TV no matter what they do in 2025. So I didn't throw that in one of my predictions just because I didn't want to spend too much time on it and upset people, because the majority of the fans that I've spoken to believe that they will be off Access TV this year. But I got to direct you guys to AEW Shockwave, who can't get a deal. Ring of Honor can't get a deal. And these are companies with a lot more backing and would have more viewership if they had the deals. The Ring of Honor product is doo-doo, don't get me wrong, but I do think they would do close to Collision numbers, which would still kind of be over TNA. They had to cancel Rampage. Like these, no one's asking for wrestling. Nobody. I think the distribution deal with Canada is awesome. I think they're going to continue to find some around the world, and I think that's going to be great for them. I've been telling you guys to prepare for Access TV for the long haul. I know everyone's saying the right things, and I'm sure everyone wants to get off Access TV, but I could not even tell you the first. I don't even have a single idea in my head of a company that would carry it. Like the only company that I was like, or a television station that I think would carry it is True TV, but I think they're doing AEW reruns or whatever. That's the only one that I think is would ever be a possibility. I think we're going to see Access TV in more homes. I know they're in less now, but I think we're going to see it in more homes before we see them off Access TV. But I mean, I've seen people, oh, Fox, USA, all this shit. Like, I don't think there's, even though things are trending up, and I think the connection with WWE is a positive thing, I don't think there's any evidence that if you put it on a bigger station, that they would do significantly larger numbers. I just do not see that. Like if Collision is unable to break 300,000, for instance, and they have a much bigger fan base than TNA does. So, I just don't know. I know TNA was doing 300,000 plus many times on Pop TV. I think the audience is there. It's just the first run audience is not there. People who are going to tune in live and watch it. That's what I think has gone down over the years, not the people actually watching TNA. I think there's more people watching it by far. I just think it is there's obviously TNA Plus, but I think it's a DVRable product. I think if someone says I love WWE, I love AEW, I watch those live, I don't think they're like, hey, let me watch TNA live also. I just think that they throw it on the DVR. So I bet the DVR numbers are very good for TNA, but to me, there's no evidence that someone would pick the show up. Is that overly negative? Maybe. I don't know. But that will do it for me. Your boy, BQ. We will talk soon. I got to watch the episode of Impact. I'm not excited about it because the card looks awful, but we'll see. Maybe I like it. Maybe I don't. I don't know. I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.